The issue of migrancy is a sensitive one globally. In Africa alone, hundreds of thousands of migrants lost their lives undertaking treacherous journeys to neighboring countries seeking to improve their lives. Their vulnerability to xenophobic incidents is also on the increase for reasons that stretch beyond nationality alone. Africities Day 3 witnessed the launch of a Pan-African network on migration.
When we looking at the broader continent, the African continent, you see the challenges that we have the past 2 years. The thousands of migrants, the last figure we saw is 3,500 people who perished in the Mediterranean. Many Africans cannot cross borders to visit their own land. In some countries, and I'm going to take the example of South Africa, we've been seeing the past few years, in 2008 and in 2015, people were burnt alive just for them coming from another country. So when you're looking at those challenges, we definitely see that there is a need for us to be connected as Africans and asking ourselves what are the challenges that we face in this continent, why people cannot easily migrate in their own land, which is the African continent. So I think it's very important for us to launch the Pan-African network to deal with migrations and to make sure that local authorities have been involved, because there are role players. They're playing a critical role. They're receiving the migrants or they're sending migrants. So they should be involved so that it is a very easy process for the Africans to find solutions of the challenges.
I think it was a very important discussion, one from my own personal view. Migration is as old as civilization, and migration can play a very positive role towards innovation, development of any community. So the launching of the network, it provided me with an opportunity to be able to share our own experiences as South Africa, our own experience as a Northern Cape, somebody from the Northern Cape. And I think it's also important for us that migration, whatever negative or positive impact of migration, it takes place at the level of a municipality.
Look, as people were mentioning during our discussion, is that already we know that we don't have a good database of African migrants. When, for instance, issues which are making people to move from one country to another, we are all speculating. We don't know the real issues. So we naming them, but we don't know. So we need to, for instance, approach people like researchers. We need to approach activists, people who are working on migration issues. And I'm sure that we'll be able to come up with a clear idea of why people are moving from one country to another.
We need to look at the positive part of migration. It's not something negative. Whenever people find an opportunity to interact, they learn from each other. It provides an opportunity for innovation. So we must look at migration in a positive manner, because it has always been there. Once we resolve issues that I'm raising, that issues of inequality, migration, you cannot stop it. People will always move from one place to another. Sometimes it might not be driven by economic setup, but it might be driven that somebody has fallen in love, someone at a particular place. So it's not always driven by negative aspects.
The good example we want to take here when talking about migration. Look, in ECOWAS, in the West African region, next year, 2016, they are going to produce a single ID book. And with that ID book, you don't even need a passport to move in the West African countries. So doing that, it won't make the countries there to disappear or the economy will fall apart. Instead, this is enforcing, strengthening the people there. And that's what we're looking for in the SADC region. In the SADC region, I don't see the need for a Zimbabwean or a guy from Lesotho to have a special dispensation to come to South Africa. Doesn't mean anything for me. You say that you have SADC? What is SADC about? SADC is just about a talk show. SADC should be where the first thing people should move, and the second thing will be the trade and so on and so forth. But in SADC, I think many policies that they're talking about, yes, very interesting policies, but the only thing is that they're not allowing people to move. So you have your nice policies, but people cannot move. So your policies are sitting somewhere in your drawers. Yeah. So when people are now granting some special dispensation, we're saying it's not what we want. We want people to be able to move in the 15 or 16 SADC countries because they are members of that structure. South Africa can use that for the thousands of people who are living here already, produce them with some papers, allow them to open some businesses because they'll be able to employ some South Africans working in their small businesses, especially the informal sector, for them to be able to grow their economy.
Transparency International conducted a discussion on corruption in Africa. They say during the last year, 75 million Africans passed bribes. If corruption is left unchecked, according to them, this will hamper Africa's further development and economic growth.
And then hopefully we'll get...
To the extent that this report focuses on the public sector, the perceptions of citizens on corruption in their public sector in the respective countries, Africa is not doing well. It's one of the worst regions around the world because the main finding is that citizens in the majority still have to pay a bribe to access basic services. Whereas in other regions, corruption is there, yes, but in less visible ways, and it happens at different levels than those that affect the daily lives of citizens.
It's quite surprising and alarming, on the continent to see that, well, the business executive, for the first time, they are actually coming out, second. On top of it is the police that were found to be corrupt. And this is really worrying because you're looking at the private sector where we believe that, well, they have a key role to make in terms of development on the continent. And knowing that, well, the private sector is not clean enough as well, we know that, well, things are not going so well for the continent, and the poor citizens are actually being affected because we're losing a lot of finances, be it through illicit financial flows and the like. So we need to clean up, the private sector in terms of the business sectors. Maybe I would try to say it's the recommendations that are out there, because if you're looking at the fact that, well, almost 75 million. That's the estimate in the, on the continent that, well, people have paid a bribe. We are looking at it to say there is need for government to do much more in terms of strengthening the laws, even coming up with laws in terms of on information, the whistleblower protection, so that we can have many people who are able to report freely, as well as not feeling retaliation and being intimidated in any way. So that is something that would aid for governments, as well as even the courts as well. In this report, it indicates that the police and the courts are where most people pay the bribe. Actually, in terms of not just perception, but then actual payment, it has been on the police as well as the courts. So we need the judges as well as government to make sure that, well, we end impunity and we make sure that people receive all the information, the services that they need without paying a bribe, because that's their right to access to the other services that they need.
Africa's challenges are being tackled from the bottom up at the Africities Summit. It's all about inclusivity, finding African solutions to African problems. For daily updates, tune in to africities.tv.